Hi, everyone, and welcome to episode 227 of the Tick Bootcamp podcast. The title of today's interview is Pain to Purpose, an interview with Madi Peters. My name is Kristen Anos.
And I'm Matt Sabatello.
It was such a joy talking with Madi today. I'm so inspired by her journey and basically how everything she's gone through has led her to finding her purpose and becoming a naturopathic doctor and giving back.
Kristen, Madi was our 227th podcast guest, and we learned so much from her. She talked to us about how she got stuck in the healing cycle where she kept treating for Lyme for 3 years, but wasn't getting any better. She finally found that there were two things preventing her from healing, both of which you talk about in your book, Krista, and she was finally able to address those things, overcome them, and she's so close to remission.
You know, Matt, I related so much to Madi's story, not only also going to a clinic and doing some really intense treatments, but finding out that there were missing pieces to the puzzle.
So, Krista, that's why it's so important for everybody to listen to this podcast episode with Madi and to check out your book, TikTok, It's Lyme O'Clock, A Warrior's Guide to Reclaiming Health and Happiness, dropping on January 11th. And I've been so fortunate to be able to read this and gain so much personally from your book and Madi's experience on this podcast episode.
And without further ado, Pain to Purpose with Madi Peters. Well, welcome, Madi, to the Tick Bootcamp podcast. So excited to have you here.
I'm excited to be here.
Yay. Well, I would love to hear a little bit about your backstory, where did you grow up, where you live now.
Yeah, so I grew up in St. Catharines, Ontario in Canada. I grew up with my two sisters and my parents, and I don't know, we have a family cottage near Bancroft, Ontario that we spent like most of our summers and holidays at, which is lovely. It's about 2 hours north of Toronto, 4 hours from our home. Mm-hmm. I am now living in Toronto for school. I'll get into that later, I guess. But yeah, I'm recently moved to Toronto, but have lived in St. Catharines, Ontario my whole life.
Oh my gosh, I love Canada. I want to come up where you are. What was your education like?
Yeah, so I am 22 now. So I did all of my high school in St. Catharines, and then I went to Brock University, which is also in St. Catharines, took medical science there. At the time I was healthy. I was just really into science and math, not totally sure what I wanted to do. I got sick with Lyme around grade 11 of high school. And then after Brock University, I applied to the Canadian College of Naturopathic Medicine, which is where I'm at currently, to study to become a naturopathic doctor. So I'm in year 1 of 4 of that, but it's an exciting journey.
That's amazing. And I can't wait to hear more about it. So you got sick when you were around, 16?
Yeah.
Grade 11. So before getting sick, what was your childhood like? Did you have dreams and passions? Were you active in sports and things?
Yeah, I was definitely an active kid and teenager. I danced competitively from, I think I was 9 until I graduated high school. So that was a huge part of my life, upwards like 15, 20 hours a week of my daily life.
Oh my gosh.
And then I did gymnastics on the side because I couldn't pick between which one I loved more. I coached gymnastics all through high school because it was the best like side job I've ever had. And then I was on my school's swim team in high school. I ran my school's dance team. I was on my school student council. Wow. I was thinking back, I don't know how I did it. It was like 6 a.m. to 10 p.m. every day. Thankful to my parents and my sister for driving me around everywhere.
That's amazing. And so when you got sick around age 16, did things change?
Yes, it was from one extreme to the other. I think it was around like April, May of grade 11. And obviously at first you're just like, oh, it's only lasting a couple of weeks. I was trying to tough it out with school. And then after about 3 weeks of all the neurological symptoms I was having, like debilitating migraines all day, every day, the light and noise were just exploding my head and really triggering. I was so exhausted. I was like falling asleep. I could barely make it to lunch. I was having to go have naps in my teacher's office. I would have to sleep when I get home from school. I was really dizzy and fatigued. I couldn't keep up with dance practice without just completely falling apart. So eventually I was like, this is serious. So we started going to see all the doctors, and thankfully I was a really good student and my teachers all loved me and knew I worked hard and wasn't trying to get out of anything. So I ended up missing the last like month and a half of grade 11, and they just thankfully passed me and let me go have my bed rest for the month and a half, which I'm really grateful for. Happy I was in high school at the time and not university, because my accommodations in university were a little less nice.
Yeah.
But yeah, so I was, all of a sudden I was off. Dance season was done by then. So, or I guess when I first got sick, I was finishing up the season for dance. I remember going to the ER the night before our dance recital and just like pushing through it because no one really knew what was going on. I was kind of keeping quiet about it. So I pushed through that last dance recital and then was off school for the next month and a half and did absolutely nothing.
Your body needed it.
Yeah.
It's
and
amazing.
I thought a month and a half would be long enough, but it definitely wasn't.
Definitely not. We learn as we go.
Yeah.
What was grade 12 like?
So I was stubborn and set on that. I was like, I need to go to university the next year. I'm going to finish grade 12. I'm going to pick up all my commitments. I thought a summer in May and June off would be fine. So I went back into grade 12 full swing. I gratefully had some spares, as you do in grade 12. I remember my mom and swim coach forcing me to quit the swim team. Like literally, like my mom started to be like, I'm not taking you. My coach was like, you're not allowed to be on the team. But I was being so stubborn. It's like my favorite thing. So I still did things, and my dance teachers were kind of trying to get me to like cut back too, but I was definitely stubborn, and it was kind of my last year of all those like high school extracurricular things. So I really wanted to stay involved. So I pushed through more. Thinking back now, I probably should have let myself rest, or like it would have done better in the long run. Maybe would have shortened the course, but
shoulda, woulda, coulda.
Exactly. And you can't really change anything now, but
no,
I
can't.
remember getting my grade 12 report card, and my absences were like through the roof, and I still did well because I did my own work and focused. But yeah, I definitely was not at school a lot.
Oh my gosh. Now, do you remember being bit by a tick?
Not at all.
Not at all.
No.
Yeah, that's a common story for so many people. And when you first got sick in grade 11, were people believing you? How did your family react?
Yeah, my parents were definitely like, this is from night and day, because they obviously saw how busy I was and how energetic, and I wasn't a complaining kid. Like I wasn't just like trying to get out of going to school, or like I loved going to school. I loved all my practices. All of a sudden when I couldn't go, or I was calling my mom to pick me up from school, they're like, this is pretty intense. Like, but I feel like with everyone else, it was hard because I just had this vague list of neurological symptoms, and it was hard to explain. It's like, oh, I have a headache. And someone's like, yeah, me too. And I'm like, no, not the same thing.
Not the same.
So that was definitely tough. So I think I really kept it more quiet through the end of my high school, and just tried to really put a face on when I went to school and saw people, which was also not a great strategy. It exhausted me to no end to act super healthy and perfect in grade 12, and that like all day, and then come home and collapse. And like, I think I just broke down most nights after school because I was so exhausted, and like it just added to my exhaustion, pretending like I was good because it was too hard to explain that I wasn't.
Yeah, I always say that we are the best actors in the world. Like we would be winning an Oscar for
I did some good performing.
Of pretending to be well. Now, how were your friends at school during this time? Did you tell them, or kind of just have that brave face on?
Yeah, my close friends knew what was going on, like vaguely, but I didn't even know what was going on until that January of grade 12 was when I got that Lyme diagnosis. So it was about a year later. And at that point, I was kind of in shock from, like, I remember coming home from the appointment, and like, I just had no idea what had happened, like what was going on. And I can get more into that story later, but yeah, it was definitely hard. It was kind of a weird thing to tell people. Eventually I kind of started telling my close friends, but even then some people like had no idea. Like I graduated high school and they had no clue what had gone on, but my close friends definitely were like supportive and there for me as much as they could, because I barely understood it at the time, so they barely understood it, obviously, where I feel like now I have a better understanding of it, so my close friends understand it more.
Exactly. I so relate to that. Growing up, did you ever learn about Lyme disease? Do you remember it being taught or talked about?
I remember, like, I mean, I live in Niagara. I guess you guys probably you wouldn't know much about Niagara, like the region I live in, but it's definitely lots of like nature and hiking trails, and even Ontario is full of camping and cottages and
Mhm.
forests. So I think I remember like seeing tick signs or like be aware of ticks. And I even know at Brock, there's like by all the edges of the forest, there's like watch for tick signs.
Mhm.
I think it is also very endemic in that Southern Ontario region. So I remember seeing like a couple tick signs.
But it
My
wasn't like
parents had,
talked about.
yeah, and I only
Mhm.
knew like my uncle's family friend's son had Lyme. My parents had gone to this big fundraiser maybe 4 years prior.
Mm.
But I was young and didn't go to it, didn't know much about it. But I ended up reconnecting with him about a year or two later, which was really helpful. But other than that, I hadn't really heard of it much.
Yeah, that seems to be our story as well.
Yeah.
And hopefully that changes with these
Yeah.
podcasts and things. I would love to hear more about your diagnosis story a little bit.
Yeah. So we started going obviously to my family doctor, to any walk-in ER around our area, just starting the local ones. And
Mhm.
I went to like internists, neurologists, family physicians, all the specialists, and I was getting like migraine medications, or maybe you have a concussion, but I'd never got my head hit, different like
Mm.
painkillers for headaches. The whole you're stressed, you're a 16-year-old girl, you're anxious, you're depressed, you're making it up.
Yep.
And that was really hard. I was thinking back, I was really young and it was very intense. And I'd never even thought of the fact that a doctor wouldn't believe you. Like, it just had never crossed my mind. I was 16 and had gone for like, I'd
Yep.
broken my hand, I'd had a couple like strep throat or something, but
Mhm.
it was definitely hard. And I mean, I was also at a weird age where I was kind of on the cusp of like making my own medical decisions, but like, so some doctors would talk to me where some would talk to my parents.
Oh, wow.
And we had some weird things when like the doctor would be like, no, you make the decision. And then I'd be like, oh, like, what do your parents think? So it was definitely, that added a weird dynamic to trying to figure out what was going on and navigating all the medical stuff.
Yeah.
And I tried to see everything. I went to like chiropractors.
Mhm.
I don't think I actually went to a naturopath until I was diagnosed, interestingly enough.
Mhm. Did you start seeking treatment immediately after symptoms began, or was it like a couple months
I would
of
say a week,
a week?
or like,
Wow.
so a week after I like left school and was like, so maybe it had been like 3 or 4 weeks of like really
Mhm.
serious. We just started going to my family doctor and everything, neurologist. We started getting, but then the referrals
Mhm.
um,
How many
were,
doctors did you see? Do you
oh
know?
goodness. We used
Around.
to have a big list. I used to have this massive binder. It was a very small little notebook at first of medical stuff, turned
Mhm.
into stacks of massive binders of everything.
Mhm.
I would say at least 20 maybe, between like doctors and different healthcare professionals,
Wow. I
which
have
I know is high, but some
no,
people have so many more
no,
too.
it's not. That's around how many I saw, but it took me that
Mhm.
long in around 10 years. How long did it take you to get diagnosed?
About a year.
A year. That's a lot to
Yeah.
see in a year.
Yeah. And
Wow.
we were just kind
That's
of taking any referral we could get and doing everything. I
amazing.
remember like there's 3 different neurologists in St. Catharines, like we'll go to them all.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah.
We have to do that, and we have to keep advocating for ourselves. And it
Yeah.
sounds like you've been doing that the whole time and your family's really been on board.
Yeah. It's been really helpful. I mean, it was definitely frustrating in some of the like waiting games when they're like, see a specialist in 4 months from now is pretty tricky.
Mhm.
But in that
Super
time,
hard.
we did all the like MRIs, CAT scans, spinal taps, every
Yep.
test of the books. And then, yeah, we couldn't figure anything out.
Yeah. How did it feel to learn that there were some doctors that didn't believe you?
It is like, it's traumatic. Like, I'm not going to make it
Mhm.
sound any nicer. Like, it's really upsetting, but I think I don't know. Obviously, I'm going into naturopathic medicine and want to be a medical professional, but on the
Yeah.
patient side, you just don't like, you can't look at doctors the same way because they've dismissed you and mistreated you. Um, yeah, it's
Yeah.
definitely. pretty traumatic.
Rough. And do you feel at all that gender plays a role in this? I personally have, as a
Yeah,
woman, for whatever reason, I get more dismissed.
I think for sure. I think my gender and age made a perfect little
Mhm.
combination there. I think at any age, women are misdiagnosed more. I actually read a book. It's called Doing Harm by Maya Dunsberg, I think her name is. And
Mm.
it's all about the gender bias and misdiagnosis in medicine. And it is probably one of the best books I've read. Um,
Wow. Speaking of misdiagnoses, were you misdiagnosed within that year?
yes, but with nothing. I mean, yes, but nothing like no substantial disease. It was kind of like, oh, maybe this, or maybe like tension headaches, or maybe this and that, or like
Mhm.
maybe migraines, but it was nothing that I was like, no, that's not it. So I never had treatment for anything else.
Yeah. Okay, so most of your symptoms were mainly neurological. Can you
Yeah.
touch on those a little bit more?
Yeah. So I was saying I had these like, like debilitating pounding headaches
Mhm.
that never broke ever.
24/7, basically.
24/7 for like 2 years straight, I think
Oh
was
my
like,
God.
yeah. And then I had this, my eyes and like were really sensitive to light and they were just really strained and blurry vision. Uh,
Mhm.
like noise as well was just like knives in my head. I was really fatigued and weak and dizzy.
Mhm.
A lot of brain fog, just exhaustion. I think those were the main ones, but then everything comes and goes. And like, I feel like I had plenty of other symptoms here and there, but those were the
Those are the
main
main
ones.
ones. We do have like
Yeah.
main symptoms and then like secondary symptoms.
Yeah.
I
And then
feel
there's all the
like,
treatment effects and
and then as
yeah.
you go on this journey, you're like, oh, that was a symptom. Huh.
Yeah.
I've had a lot of those aha moments.
Yeah, absolutely.
So then you got diagnosed.
Yeah. So
How was that,
it was an adventure.
to say
So
the least?
we ended up finding through my family friend who's also a chiropractor. I was going to him to see that there's something wrong with my neck, and then he mentioned that a friend of his had kind of a similar story and had gone to a doctor in New York that was specialized in Lyme. And we're like, you know what? We don't know what else to do. We'll go.
Yeah.
So it was about a 9-hour drive from my house. So thankfully, my parents and I were like, yep, we're going. I think we'd done the IGeneX test, the
Mhm.
Lyme test back then, and we had gotten it back. And my family doctor he tried his best. He's like, I have no idea how to interpret this, was trying to be helpful, but was being really honest, which I am grateful for. I remember he called and he's like, oh, the test is negative. And he called back 10 minutes later and was like, actually, I think it might be positive. I'm not really sure. So then I think my mom spent the whole week, like, I just remember our kitchen table covered in like papers and her just like trying to research everything to figure out if this was positive, we should go to this doctor in New York.
Mhm.
So we did end up going. Thankfully, my parents, we did a little drive to New York for 9 hours. It was in Plattsburgh.
Amazing.
And we saw the doctor there. It was Dr. Maureen McShane, who is sadly retired now.
Mm.
But she was absolutely wonderful.
Was it night and day talking with her versus the other doctors that
It
you?
was like nothing I'd experienced. It was, I think there was an hour intake with her nurse and then 2 hours with Dr. McShane. So I was just like, oh my God, you're talking about that. Like, you're letting me, like, I'm getting all my words out. When I say something, you're like, oh, I understand. So it was just, she had Lyme herself. So that's
Oh,
also
wow.
a really, like, she just completely understood it. And I just felt understood for the first time. And she really talked to me and my parents really well. There was always such a good dynamic between the four of us in the appointments, which I really appreciated.
Yeah, I love that. And did you feel like she looked at your overall story compared to the other doctors?
Start to finish. Yeah.
It's so important. Those are the doctors that really make a difference, and we
Mm-hmm.
need them. And then you
Yeah.
got diagnosed. And how did you feel? Did you feel excited? Did you feel nervous?
I honestly think I cried for the 9-hour drive home. Like, I just sat in the back seat and I think I was in shock because I was like, yeah, this is great. And I was like, well, this sucks. So this is not the, like, I wanted the easier diagnosis than this.
Yeah, but at least it kind of made sense.
Yeah. So
Right?
it was like, yes, this is like validating. I have a word to say when people ask what's wrong. I'm going to start treatment, which is a huge step. And I was like, how serious is this? Like,
Yeah.
I really like, And I remember asking her, I was like, so is this like 3 months, 6 months? And she's like, we'll reevaluate at 3 and 6 months. And I was like, oh, cool. Like, perfect. I'll be good to go to university in the fall. But she was also like telling me not to, she's like, it's probably gonna be more than 6 months, but you're also young and was healthy before this. And it was only a year since I'd gotten seriously sick. So
Madi,
it was a wave of emotions.
Yeah.
Madi, did you test for anything else Drygenix besides Lyme disease, or was it just strictly a Lyme test?
I honestly can't remember. My amazing mother spent all her time analyzing the tests. I think it was all the co-infections and stuff too.
So and you explained to this doctor, obviously, the severeness of your symptoms, and the thought was within about a 3-month window, you'd be back to your full health.
Oh no, I just thought that. She definitely did not agree with that.
Okay. I was going to say that.
No, I was being optimistic and thinking, I was like, oh, like we'll start treatment. Like, when am I going to be better? But I had an appointment with her every 3 months. So she's like, we'll reevaluate how you're doing in 3 months. And then every 3 months, we either met online or we drove back to New York.
So walk us through your next steps. You got your diagnosis. You had that emotional response, which is like, I finally know what's wrong with me. But then what did you do to start treating Lyme disease?
Yeah. So Dr. McShane was an MD, but was kind of working as a functional medicine doctor. So I did lots and lots of oral antibiotics, but also a ton of supplements, herbal formulas, tinctures, all different naturopathic stuff like the binders and clays. And I can't even remember. I remember coming home and making this spreadsheet and being like, oh my God. But so we did that, and it kind of switched up different oral antibiotics, oral antifungals, all the different things. Every 3 months, we kind of switched up the plan. I started seeing a naturopathic doctor in the area and doing intravenous vitamin C and different, I forget what else we did at first. And then I went to a different naturopathic doctor in the area and started doing more of the glutathione and phosphatidylcholine IVs. And that became a pretty heavy part of my treatment as well. And on top of all the pills and supplements at home.
So of all the things that you did, Madi, which one would you say helped you the most when you first started treating?
I don't know. I would say at first, I also started a pretty intense diet at the time. I was like doing the no gluten, no sugar, no dairy, no this, no that. From Dr. McShane. I think a combination of it, honestly, that's about all I was doing right away. And I definitely, I think it was I didn't get better in the first couple of months. It was a big shock to my system to start this huge treatment plan. By the end of grade 12, I was feeling pretty good, not better. I would say I had made some improvement, was definitely not worse. I don't know.
Do you recall any of the names of the specific antibiotics you were cycling, or the antifungals, or the herbs, or the binders? Any specific medication you were on?
Yeah, I think I took every antibiotic in the book. Now, when I'm in school learning about them, I was like, check, check, check. I think I've honestly taken, I would say over 20 different antibiotics. She was always cycling different ones. I honestly can't remember which ones. They were mostly all of them. And then supplements were all over the place as well. I would say I was upward of 50 different ones throughout the time.
So now walk us through, you're at your end of your senior year, and you really, it sounds like your baseline, and you made some progress, but you're still kind of just plateaued, right? You're not getting worse like you were, but you're not seeing the results you really want. So do you continue on with this after the first 6 months or so of treatment, or do you pivot over to something else?
Yeah. So I remember we went back that summer to see her in New York in person, reevaluated everything, same kind of idea of plan, but different specific medications and supplements. And I'd obviously seen some improvement, but not as much as I obviously wanted to see. So the plan was to keep doing it at least for the next 6 months. At that time, I was very set on going away to university for the fall. And I was like, well, I'm getting better. There's no way I'll be fine to go. I was just really ready to have a fresh start. So I went away to a university. I went to Queens, which is about 4 hours away from my parents. And it only lasted about 8 weeks until I moved back home. I was just so sick. And I think I kind of lost my healthy routine. I was trying to keep up with university life and school, and kind of dropped my treatment a little too much. So then I moved home and we restarted treatment.
So when you moved home and restarted treatment, was it really the same sort of cycle where you were just leveling out again and not seeing much progress?
I think I definitely got better moving home when I focused back on my health. I wasn't under the stress of school or messed up sleep schedule or not eating as healthy as I should be. I was definitely trying to keep up with like university and partying and social life as well. Trying to go to university and not be the sick kid in residence. So kind of was keeping it quiet, which wasn't benefiting me whatsoever. So we started back with treatment. The next year was honestly about the same until my second year of university. I was kind of making like slow progress, was doing okay, but not anywhere near where I wanted to be. And then in second year, we started this, I think the drug was rifampin, which is a really intense antibiotic. And I remember her being like, you're doing really well. If we can get through this treatment plan, it's kind of the last push. You should like, hopefully this is the last round of antibiotics. I was like, perfect. Like I'll tough out the horrible herxing and the side effects. And it was so horrible. I remember my parents being like, we need to take you off this because I was so sick every day. And I look back at that. I was in university part-time at Brock at the time, back at home. And I don't remember anything I learned that semester. I kind of joked that I just like blacked out for the semester. I got through it, but it was not pretty. So then that January, I just kind of decided I'd gotten as far as I could with this treatment method, and we really needed to reassess what was going on because it had done some work, but I don't think it wasn't getting me over the next hurdle or like next bump in the road.
So I want to, before we talk about rifampin, I want to come back to that. I want to circle back on something you said though twice already. So when you were in high school, you mentioned that you were pretty quiet about it and you didn't want to share what was going on with your teachers and your peers and the fellow students. And again, in college, when you were struggling, you didn't want to share your health issues with anybody, and you tried to be a normal quote unquote college student, and you party and you do all things like that. So it's really going to become a two-part question. But the first part is, why didn't you want to share what was going on with your friends and especially your teachers so they understood what was going on and can be, helpful and really help guide you when you're struggling with your health?
Yeah, so my teachers were fully in the loop in high school once, especially they helped me take that time off at the end of grade 11 and going into grade 12. I was really in contact with my school and my guidance counselor and all my teachers, and they knew everything that was going on. It was more with my peers, like my close friends knew what was going on, but it wasn't like a vocalize it on social media to every one of my classmates kind of thing, where now I'm definitely obviously a little more open about things. I think it was just new and I didn't really fully understand it myself. And I think every time I told someone, I got bombarded with questions instead of empathy, which is just, I think at one point I kind of was like, what's the point in telling someone when I don't actually get the reaction I want and it makes it worse? So I kind of wanted to go to university and just have a fresh start from high school because it had kind of been a mess the last year and a half. It wasn't the best strategy. Would never do that now. I was just thought it would work, and it definitely didn't.
Now, do you think that the controversy over Lyme disease played a role? Because people, when they're sick with other things like cancer or more commonly accepted and known diseases, they're very open about their illness and they share it with everybody, including their peers. And you didn't. So was that partly due to the fact that Lyme is so controversial, which probably made it harder for you to manage your illness, you think?
Absolutely. I think part of it was people didn't even understand what it was when you said it. So that's when the questioning comes in, and then they don't understand the severity, because even if it's not controversial, like maybe my peers probably wouldn't know the controversy of it, but they would have never heard of it. And unlike what you said, like more recognized diseases. So it definitely made it more complicated. It's not like, oh, I have this disease that we all know is horrible, or I'm struggling from this thing we've learned about and you all know that it's really difficult. So it's almost like you had to prove yourself, and you'd already proved yourself to doctors over and over and over again. So I think what we were talking about acting earlier just got exhausting.
So now also talk to us about your lifestyle, because one of the things that I wish I would have known early on is that I really had to change my lifestyle in order to heal. And it sounds like you did not change your lifestyle. You wanted to be a normal college student. Again, understandably so, not to be critical, but did your doctors tell you that, look, you really should be resting and taking advantage of your time to allow your body to heal, resting and sleep and moderate exercise, not going, you mentioned you're going out and partying and maybe drinking in college, which again is a normal college experience, but in order to optimize your healing, that's really counterproductive. So I guess the first question is, did your doctors advise you against that?
Yeah. So I would say I was not going crazy in college. I definitely was partying way, way less than any of my peers, but was trying to have the occasional social experience. Through certain treatments, I obviously wasn't allowed to drink, so I'd still just try to do the social things. Mm-hmm. I feel like my doctor was obviously saying like the basics, like drinking, not drinking, and I don't think I was very often. But I was definitely focused really on healthy lifestyle. I'd grown up so active and athletic. I was really not doing much though, so that was really strange to me. But I physically couldn't keep up with the activity, so I was definitely letting my body rest. When I moved back home to my parents after being away at college, my mom and I started going to a hot yoga studio near me, and that's what all my body can handle. And even sometimes that was too much, but the two of us going together was honestly game changing. It gave me like a bit of mental break. I was kind of stuck at home. I was really bummed out. I had moved home. I had like thought I could do it and I didn't do it. I've been like a little bit type A, really thought I was like top of my class in high school. So being the kid who dropped out of college, even though it was obviously needed in medical, and not dropping out, I wasn't in the best mindset. So the yoga physically and mentally was such an important part of my lifestyle. We were eating super healthy. I was sleeping all the time. So I think that was part of I did have a really healthy lifestyle. There was just a brief time when I might have ignored lifestyle, and it clearly kicked me in the butt. So
Another follow-up question is, you mentioned that you thought this would be about a 3-month healing journey in 11th grade. Now here you are, you brought us up to your second year in college around the holidays, and you're probably feeling worse than you were in 11th grade with the rifampin. So talk to us about your emotions. Like, how were you processing your illness after being sick for so many years and really having a lot of ups and downs, and now feeling probably worse than you were in the beginning?
Yeah, I would say that part of that winter of second year, I was probably hit my like mental low of that point of treatment. But up till then, I was kind of, if not doing better, not getting worse. And at this point, I had started getting worse and worse again. So I think mentally that really took a toll on me. I really like shut in. I always I literally only talked to my parents, and I love them to pieces. And I'm so grateful I got to be home and with them all the time. But it was definitely really difficult, and I struggled a lot with that.
So now that you're home and it's been about 3 years of being sick and treating, did you or your family or your friends ever doubt that you were really sick with Lyme disease? And that happens with many of us, where you're sick for so long and people start to question, are you sure that's really it? You're not getting any better. So, did that ever come across your mind or your family's mind?
No, but I think we hit that point after doing that 2 years of treatment with Dr. McShane, being like, something else is going on here. Like, we thought it was the Lyme, but there was another layer to the picture. We definitely had seen improvements and things were working. And I never doubted that Lyme was at least part of it. But that kind of leads into our next step of treatment.
Well, before we go there, Maddie, I do want to follow up on rifampin, because Bartonella has become a really important topic of interest here, because a lot of the psychological symptoms and a lot of residual symptoms that aren't addressed after treatment for Lyme generally are due to Bartonella, and rifampin seems to help. But rifampin is a really aggressive treatment, and it causes a lot of people to have a really bad flare. So you mentioned it made you very sick. So talk to us about how you felt when taking rifampin. Like, what exactly flared, and what were your symptoms after taking rifampin?
Yeah, so I don't remember all the exact things. Things kind of blurred in my head a little bit, but that time definitely stood out. I think all my symptoms neurologically were way worse. I was pretty bedridden, just was absolutely like hurting head to toe. I was throwing up all the time. I was just so sick. I remember like I couldn't reading, like my eyes were just a mess. My head was so foggy and like stabbing pain all the time. I think it just took all my symptoms from like a 10 to a 20 on a scale of 1 to 10.
That paints a very good picture. So thank you for sharing that description. But I have to ask you, now you're again 3 years in, and I'm sure you've learned about co-infections. Were you ever tested for other co-infections throughout this 3-year window, and did any pop positive while you were exploring other options?
Yeah, so Dr. McShane, we did all that testing. So when I was saying all that things she was doing for Lyme, and all the antibiotics and supplements and herbals and things before were for Lyme and co-infections. I feel like I just grouped them together because it's a lot to say. But yeah, I think I came up with, I would say, nearly all of them. The Babesia, Ehrlichia, Bartonella, the whole bag of fun.
The whole shebang.
Yeah.
So at this point now, you're flaring pretty bad from rifampin, and you're really, if anything, at most just establishing a baseline to not get worse. So what did you decide to do around the holidays in your second year of college? It sounds like that was a really important change in your treatment. So what happened then?
Yeah, so we kind of just decided that I was like, I can't do another round of oral antibiotics. I can't keep doing the rifampin. Something's not working. So we spent a lot of time just trying to research, well, what else can we do? Because that seemed like she was the closest doctor to us that was treating it, and she was 9 hours away. And we didn't really know of any other options. So we spent a lot of time researching, trying to figure out what was going on. And that family friend of my uncle's I talked about earlier had gone to this clinic in Florida. So I kind of reconnected with him and started asking about his experience. And then I was kind of searching different clinics and then trying to find out if I had heard of people going them before, because you never know what you read on the internet. So I wanted to hear some firsthand experiences. Always helpful to talk through someone who's been through something similar, what they did, what worked. So we started looking pretty seriously at this clinic in Florida, and it was the Spinal Institute of Wellness. And I think I was living in Dunedin, but it was in Oldsmar, Florida. So we ended up moving there in May, but that whole kind of winter, spring was a lot of research. What are we doing? Planning for the next steps.
And were you still in school at that time? This is your second year of college, and now I think it was your fall semester. I'm sorry, your spring semester. Were you still attending college?
Yeah. So I was on like a reduced course load through my first and second year. I ended up not finishing the semester, and when we went to Florida, when I came back, I finished those courses the next year. So wasn't the most smooth semester, but I got all the credits in the end. But yeah, I ended up, I think come March around that time, was just bedridden and couldn't keep up with school. And that's when then we were trying to plan the steps for Florida. It took a little bit obviously to get started and all the logistics.
And Madi, besides the patient referrals for the Spinal Wellness Institute in Florida, was there anything else that drew you there? Was the treatment different than what you were doing that gave you hope that maybe a different approach would be better for you? Were there any other factors, I guess I should ask, that drew you there?
Yeah, so it was a completely different approach than what we'd been doing. I can explain more about the clinic in a minute, but I'd obviously done like over 2 years straight of oral antibiotics. My gut was an absolute mess. I just had gone through, I think, all the options of those kind of things, and nothing was working. And I had destroyed my gut and had all the candida issues and digestive issues now. So it just wasn't looking like that was an option. And around us in Ontario and even around Canada, there wasn't really, I couldn't find anywhere to get all the intravenous antibiotics or other treatment approaches. We looked at a couple different places, but sadly, Florida was the closest one to our house.
So if you can expand upon that a little bit, because first you came to New York and now you went to Florida. So are options that much more limited in Canada than the US for treatment?
Yeah, it's tricky. So I think because the US is a private healthcare system, in Canada we have a public one, there's more like in the US, physicians can kind of like specialize in certain things, and there's different, I don't know, I think it's statewide, so I don't know too much about the US medical system. I just know from what I've experienced, I can kind of practice privately and not like in Canada, if they're a public practice, you're only getting your same specialties and same scope of practice.
And do you think that in general, would you say that Lyme awareness and tick-borne illness awareness is less in Canada than it is in the States, from, obviously coming to New York and meeting with that doctor and then going to Florida and seeing with doctors there? Do you think that awareness is less in Canada than the States?
I think awareness is the same. I just think the medical, or what's the word for it? Like being able to access to medical professionals is definitely different. But the clinic I went to in Florida, barely anyone was even from Florida. So most people, I was one of the only, there's a couple Canadians, but there are people from all over the states. So I don't even think it's a US versus Canada. I think it turns into like a province versus different states, like states versus each other. So yeah, I don't think anyone has it figured out very well.
But Madi, what about chronic Lyme awareness? Because chronic Lyme is like this dirty word that many people don't believe in. Post-treatment Lyme disease syndrome is becoming more widely accepted because the CDC finally has, acknowledged that several years ago and put it on their website.
Yeah.
But, in regard to persistent Lyme disease or long-term symptoms due to a late-stage Lyme diagnosis, is that commonly accepted in Canada?
I think it depends. I think the same as if you went to any general like family doctor or medical doctor in the US and Canada, you're probably not going to get much. I think there's definitely been a similar boom in like naturopathic doctors, functional medicine doctors specializing in Lyme, like the Lyme literate doctors. I think that's really popular in Ontario, even probably throughout Canada, with naturopathic doctors. But obviously, with their scope of practice, like I always went to one when I was with Dr. McShane, but I kind of always paired it with an MD because I needed both aspects of my treatment. So that was kind of, I couldn't get everything I wanted at home. There's definitely my ND at home is absolutely amazing and who inspired me to go into naturopathic medicine as my career now. But I just I needed both aspects and I couldn't get everything I needed at home, unfortunately.
So Chris is going to talk to you more about your inspiration from your naturopathic doctor and your transition now to become one, which is an awesome transformation that you have there. But I want to focus a little more on your treatment. So talk to us about the Spinal Institute of Wellness in Florida and what that was like day one. You go down there, it's probably scary. You're coming from, from Canada all the way down to Florida, and walk us through what that was like and I guess the process of becoming inpatient there in Florida.
Yeah, so it was overwhelming. I remember going down there. We drove down Friday, Saturday, and we got there. I think I started treatment on the Monday. So the clinic was set up heavily based on intravenous treatment. So I had a port line in my chest. I got about the second week I was there, and they would access it. So like put the needle into the chest with the tube every Monday. And I would sit in the IV clinic. So the main area of the clinic was all the patients in IV chairs, kind of similar to like a dialysis or chemotherapy unit I always try to describe. We'd all sit there with our IV bags. I would say like 4 to 8 hours a day. It was like a very big mix of naturopathic and pharmaceuticals, IVs. I was doing all the glutathione, phosphatidylcholine, amino acids, vitamin minerals, antibiotics, antifungals, whole mix of bags of IVs every day. And I sat there Monday to Friday, and then I would go home. So I didn't live there. So it was just a day clinic, but we obviously we rented a house from our friends that thankfully had a vacation place in Florida, which worked out amazing. And we'd go home at night after like our 9 to 5 full-time job of treatment. And I would hook myself up to more IVs at home every night. So it was just constant treatment. And then I would say like upwards of like 50 different supplements and herbal things, and even some prescription medication I was having to take. We did colonics all the time as well. I think that was the main aspects of treatment. Everyone did their own little things with. Yeah, I remember the second day I was there, I had no idea what a colonic was. I'm not sure it's coming. Oh, there we go. I had no idea what a colonic was. And I was like, yeah, like I'll do them. I'll do anything to get healthy. And I go in there and I was just like, oh, this is an experience.
Surprise.
Yeah, I don't know, maybe I should have researched it. Maybe that would have scared me. But in the end, it was fine. I think because the treatment was so intense, your body couldn't keep up with the detox fast enough. So if you weren't doing the colonics, you were just going to be reabsorbing everything you were killing off. So it was definitely needed.
So Maddie, talk to us about that. You're doing a lot of treatments, what we call the kill protocol, which is killing off the various bacteria, viruses, parasites, et cetera. And it sounds like what they did very well at Spinal Institute is also helping you remove these toxins as the pathogens were dying. So colonics being one of them. But what else were you doing from a detox standpoint to ensure, I guess, number one, your drainage pathways are open, and number two, you were purging all this massive die-off that was occurring in your body?
Yeah, so every day you always had your glutathione IVs and your phosphatidylcholine IVs. And then the amount of testing I did there, I did so much blood work every week. So they knew everything about your pathways and your like what levels of everything in your body. And they would sit and walk through every single little thing going on with you. I think I learned more biochemistry that summer than I learned in my whole undergrad. But yeah, so the detox it was never just you were doing antibiotics. It was always like you did your 2 hours of detox IVs and then you could do your antibiotics or your antifungals. So I think it was just such an intensive approach. And I think it worked well, but it was also, they had a lot of pieces working together there.
So in comparison to the treatment you were doing for the previous 3 years, did you herx less at Spinagle than you did with your doctor in New York because you were doing more to detox, or was it so aggressive that it was about the same?
I think it was worse up and downs, but for way shorter time, if that makes sense. So it was so intense that like in the morning you were herxing horribly, in the afternoon they had detoxed you and you were back to normal. Where when I was doing the treatment at home with all the oral antibiotics, obviously intravenous is getting through your system way faster in different absorption. I feel like the herx would last a couple weeks, or at least a week or a couple days. And it would take a lot of work to get it through your system, where here it was so intense. So the spikes were more intense, but shorter lived.
So is it fair to say that you were killing far harder than you were with your doctor in New York and your home treatments, but you were just recovering faster because of the additional detox tools that they were giving you at this institute in Florida?
Absolutely.
And I think you said something really powerful, that you literally went from herxing for weeks down to several hours, and by the afternoon you'd be back to yourself again. Is that correct?
Yeah.
So I think it's important, because a lot of people share with us that, you know, they'll go into these herxes that can last weeks and weeks and weeks. And I don't think they have to stay there, right? There are tools they can use to help them get out of these herxes, and that, you know, that's not normal to have to stay in a herx for that long. So
yeah,
what are some things that you did at the Spinal Institute that people could do at home that are listening that may help them with these herxes so they don't have to be stuck in these cycles?
That's a good question. I honestly don't know. I think they were really cautious there of knowing when to stop pushing. That was a key thing, because I think some people were just like ready to, everyone got there and just wanted to get better. But the nurses and doctors were so cautious of what your body could handle from like a biological blood work standpoint. Like, you're always making sure your liver and your kidneys and everything's working. So I think, like, even when I was with Dr. McShane, we had monthly blood work. So it was always, if I was herxing or something, we have to like taper back treatment. I think that was really hard for me, because I was always let's just push through, I'm okay. But you have to be so careful, because if you can make it worse. I think if you're herxing, you have to let your body rest and not just keep pushing with the treatment.
So let's talk about the immune system, because you are studying to be a naturopathic doctor. And I always wonder, you know, I have a lot of assumptions or guesses. And one of my thoughts is, when you're treating like you were previously to Florida, and you're doing a lot of kill protocols with not enough detox, your body can become a very toxic place. And when that happens, your immune system becomes really ineffective. And although the drugs are killing the various pathogens, your immune system can never sustain a healthy lifestyle. And that's why you never really got better and you had to stay on treatment. Do you think that's true? And do you think that's why in Florida you probably had better results, because you were detoxing and allowing your body to re-strengthen your immune system, so you could eventually have your body go back to a state of normalcy without the assistance of all these drugs?
Yeah, so I think the whole immune system thing is super interesting. I'm definitely not a professional on it yet, so this is not, I'm still learning. But with the immune system, I had some friends I went through treatment in Florida with who just didn't see the results that I thankfully did. And part of it was, our doctors explained that the immune system, like, you're in this fight mode, kind of the same thing as if you're in like the fight or flight with your hormones, but with your immune system, it's so triggered that even once the infection's gone, it forgets that like it's still fighting, because I'm not, I don't know exactly, like, I'm not gonna give all the medical terms for it, but your immune system's still fighting, even though like it's just been on fight mode for the last 3, 4, 10 years, depending on the patient. So even once the pathogens are gone, your immune system still starts attacking, and your body just can't recover because it doesn't realize that it's recovered.
Well, that's a really good point, because so many people in the chronic Lyme community develop autoimmune conditions, which I believe is the result of tick-borne illness. So do you think that, you know, really autoimmunity is your body's immune system overreacting and attacking itself, right? So do you think that this overdrive of your immune system after getting better is a contributing factor to autoimmune disease as a result of late-stage tick-borne illness?
I think it definitely could be correlated. I think that's such a fascinating area to explore more. And as I learn more in like naturopathic medical school, and specifically in Lyme, I think I would be fascinated to read about that more and see from patients. But I think there is something, if your immune system can't get turned off, you're just going to keep fighting and fighting. And that kind of leads to an autoimmune like reaction, I'm sure. I think when I left Florida, it took me a while to get my immune system back leveled out. And that's what I kept working on for probably the next year at home with my naturopathic doctor, was making sure I was still detoxing. Like, I kind of wasn't doing any of the killing, but I was still detoxing and ramping up my immune system. Or ramping down.
Ramping down.
Yeah.
So what specific tools did you do in Florida and then afterwards with your naturopathic doctor to help normalize your immune system? Or, you know, I think it's also called modulate, right? Because your immune system gets stuck, and by modulating it, it's sort of resetting it to a healthy version of an immune system. So what specific tools did you do, in case people are listening and they want to try these herbs or natural supplements or treatments themselves to try to help modulate their immune system?
Yeah, so I think the modulate word is the exact word I should have said before. I couldn't think of the word there. But yeah, you don't want to suppress your immune system because you want it to work when there is an infection, but you don't want it to be working when there's not an infection or not something to fight. So the most important probably thing I've learned in naturopathic medicine is every patient needs individualized care. So what I took is not going to work for someone else. I think there's a lot of that with, it's hard because the community is really helpful and being like, I took this, it really worked for me. But I think seeing a professional, if you have access to, because even when I'm sat in my botanical medicine lecture this morning, they're herbs, but there's side effects, there's contraindications, there's cross reactions. You have to be so careful with things. And especially with a lot of Lyme patients, you're on so many different medications and supplements and no two people are alike. I've met my friend and I have such similar cases, but things we've taken and treatments we've tried can be completely different sometimes. So I couldn't say, try this or add this to your regimen because that could completely conflict with something she's already taking. Yeah, sorry, not a great answer people are going to want to hear, but
I want to piggyback
individualized care.
That's right. Yeah,
that's a great answer though. But I do want to piggyback off that because you mentioned that things you would try would help you, but they would hurt your friend. And do you think some of that is because of other coexisting conditions, meaning you have a wide variety of co-infections you know from your testing? Maybe your friend did not, and therefore something that you were doing was addressing one of your co-infections, but your friend did not have that, and it just made her worse for whatever reason. So again, we're all different, right? And you don't know what else is going on in your body, what other things that are undiagnosed potentially, right?
Yeah, so I think everyone has, it's not like we all have the exact same even a like level of Lyme, but we also have different co-infections. I had a lot of issues with fungal and mold infections, and I have like a genetic susceptibility to mold and an inability to detox it. So that was a huge aspect of my treatment as well. Some people have different stages in treatment too, where someone could be at the beginning having to start slower, where someone's later on doing more maintenance and like immune modulation, where someone's really heavy and kill. I think no one's the same and no one's at the same stage of treatment as well.
But let's talk about what worked for you, Maddie, because some people may want to learn, even though with the disclaimer of it may not work for everybody. What specifically helped you modulate your immune system?
Yeah, so I think when I moved home, it was kind of, we'd hit a point where we like logistically, financially, life-wise needed to move back to our house. And kind of saying with the immune system, you can keep fighting for so long, but I kind of wanted to try and see how I felt without treatment, because you could be there forever because you're not going to feel good where they're bombarding your body. We kind of had to take a break and let my body rest and see how I was. So we moved home at the beginning, like end of August, beginning of September. But I think it was about a month until I really was able to, like, my body settled down and was like off treatment. But I still had my port line in. So I was going to my naturopathic doctor locally and still doing all the detox IVs, but no kill or anything. So I was doing no antibiotics or anything, but I was doing all the IV glutathione, phosphatidylcholine, all my nutrients and stuff, because I think I was being really cautious that I knew my gut had been really messed up. So I was trying to get those in my IVs. I was doing a lot of IV vitamin C if we needed to do the immune boosting, or if she thought like killing was necessary every so often, but definitely being cautious with the high dose vitamin C. I think those IVs and having my naturopathic doctor 10 minutes from my house that was specialized in or focused on Lyme and knew what was going on and followed my case kind of through the time I was in Florida. And when I came home, just took my care right back on, was really amazing and helpful.
Talk to us about the phosphatidylcholine, or people call it PC. That's been a very helpful tool for a lot of people to detox and help alleviate their symptoms. And many have seen sort of very immediate results when getting an IV. So did you experience a similar reaction when getting the PC IVs?
Yeah, so I did them all throughout before going to Florida with my naturopath at home, and then I think pretty much every day in Florida and then back home. But both places I went always paired them with glutathione IVs because the phosphatidylcholine is kind of pulling everything out and the glutathione's flushing it out. So if you do the phosphatidylcholine, I always found I didn't feel great for that first half hour of my IV doing the phosphatidylcholine, because you're just like, my head starts exploding. I feel like foggy and not good. And then you start doing the glutathione, you still don't feel great. But I think if you did it alone, I can't imagine you would feel good. I've honestly never done it without following the detox after. So I think it's important, like making sure someone knows what they're doing, because I think it could do a lot of damage. I had one friend that I was in treatment with in Florida, and he had found a doctor. I think they were in New York or somewhere on the northeast coast there. And they had been doing all these phosphatidylcholine IVs, and they'd read great things, but this doctor wasn't doing any kind of detox. So he got worse and worse and worse. And when he came to Florida, he was really, really debilitated because he did months and months of these phosphatidylcholine IVs with no form of detox.
He was essentially completely toxic at that point.
Absolutely. They were just freeing the toxins, but then they were just recirculating all through his body.
Well, that's a good transition. Talk to us about the role fungus or things like candida in your GI tract can play in detoxing, because you said that was an important factor. So I guess the first question is, how can something like candida impact you in regards to detox?
Yeah. So I think with all those oral antibiotics, I had caught such bad gut candida, which is a common side effect, especially if you're doing years of oral antibiotics. And I was on like a yeast-free, low sugar diet throughout the whole time, as my doctor was aware that this was a side effect. So it definitely helped prevent how serious it got. But I think after that amount of time, it was pretty bad. I was never really doing anything besides, I was taking like nystatin, I think, during that time to treat it, but I don't think it was doing enough because I don't even know if it was getting absorbed because my gut was all messed up. So in Florida, thankfully, heavily was based on IV. So that was really helpful to give my gut a break, but I was still doing lots of supplements, but big parts of it were being absorbed. So my gut wasn't as much of an issue. When we started doing, it's called amphotericin. It was an IV antifungal. And obviously there was not just my gut that had fungal infections, but my head always felt so clear after it because I think I was just, my whole body was clearing out. We did all the glutathione after. But every night I would go home and my stomach blew up to looking like I was 6 months pregnant. And I remember the first night it happened. I laid on the couch. And was like, my mom was with me at the time. I was like, something's not right. Like my stomach is not this big. Like I could puff it out. And I remember my cousin was pregnant at the time. I was sending her pictures. I was like, look at my baby bump. Like, and it was like, I was like, it's just a yeast baby. Like, don't worry.
A yeast baby.
Yeah. And
so
it was just blowing up. And then this is pretty gross, but I would it was all air would come out. Like I was just like air vomiting all this candida. Cause if you think about like when candida blows up, you're getting all that air. So it was pretty unpleasant. My stomach would blow up. I would be like hurling over, like not even vomiting, but like burping. It was pretty disgusting. My poor family listening to it. But every time I did this antifungal, it would happen. So clearly there was things to get rid of there.
Did the colonics help with that?
Yeah, I think because I was doing them a couple times a week with all the IVs. So whenever I did that, I did colonics that afternoon right after.
Mm-hmm. So with the candida and the yeast, what role does that play in preventing you from healing? So specifically, from what we understand, the candida prevents your body from absorbing nutrients, but also absorbing any kind of oral treatment you're taking as well. Is that correct?
From what I know, I'm not an expert on this yet, but I can imagine it would impair your digestion. But I think it's also giving another thing for your immune system to fight. Like you're just adding to the overfill, like your glass is already filled and you're just adding something to the top of it. I don't know all the specifics. I would love to learn, like obviously why I'm in naturopathic medical school. I don't like that I don't know the answers to these questions.
You're giving us a lot of answers, so don't feel bad. You're giving us a lot of great answers here.
I know, but I'm always like, why? I want to know it all.
So I do want to ask you one other question. So you mentioned mold was another major player. So obviously fungus was, you talked to us about how you address the fungus and the role that can play in preventing you from healing. But with the mold, do you know where you were exposed to mold? And also, what did you do to treat the mold specifically for you?
Yeah, so I don't know when. And I remember it was never actually brought up as an issue until we went to spinal because it was never tested for and never really discussed. Dr. McShane was focused on like all the Lyme and co-infections. I think that was kind of part of the missing picture of why I never fully got better with her treatment. There's something else. I knew there was something missing, but we went to spinal for Lyme and then we did all of these massive amount of intake tests and we do the Great Plains mycotoxin tests and all the different Great Plains tests, and my mycotoxins and molds were through the roof and I had never even really thought about that. And then we did the genetic testing and I can't remember the exact gene it was, but it means like you can't detox mold. I'm sure people are probably a little familiar with that one. So that was completely new to me at the time, but that was also Spinal's specialty as well, was the Lyme, along with the Lyme, it was the mold and the fungus. And so I don't know where I was exposed, but with this genetic disposition and like inability, I think it might have just accumulated over time. And I remember talking to people at the clinic, it was kind of always like, what came first, the chicken or the egg? Like what came first, the mold or the Lyme? Because did you have the Lyme and your immune system was suppressed and you became more susceptible to the mold, or were you exposed to mold, your immune system got more suppressed and you got Lyme easier?
I don't think we'll ever know the answers to those questions.
We won't.
Although
So
I go crazy with them as
I don't
well.
have an answer for you.
So with the mold specifically, though, I think, again, it was just another, so you said something earlier that was really powerful, I think. And LymeDisease.org did an article about, I'm treating Lyme disease and co-infections and I'm not getting better. What can it be? And they listed a whole bunch of things that can be contributing factors to not recovering. One of them was things like candida. Another of them was mold. So it sounds like when you went to Spinal Institute in Florida, they identified that you had mold illness as well as candida and fungus in your body. And those are two things that probably prevented you from succeeding with your doctor in New York. Is that something you agree with?
Absolutely. Yeah. So I think I went there and it was just, I thought Dr. McShane was full picture. And I mean, it was a different type of practice, but then this, I was like, this is really just encompassing everything. And I was like, I think I'm just adding more issues to my list of issues, but clearly, I think they definitely hinder getting better. And I wish I had known about, especially the mold a couple years before that. It was like, it's frustrating when you learn something. You're like, I wish I would have known this a couple years ago, or how come you didn't learn this? Like, what's preventing you from having access to that information, that healthcare, that treatment?
So what specific treatments in Florida did you get that were given to you to address the mold? Because I know a lot of people think they've been exposed to mold. Many people know they have mold in their home. What treatments did you do that addressed that and helped you rid your body of all these mycotoxins and mold that you couldn't detox?
Yeah, so it was definitely just supporting detox in general with all, I was saying, like the same glutathione and different IVs that way. Some of that prescription, like pharmaceutical IVs, were antifungals. So that was really helping there, helped with the candida, but also helped with the mold infections. Along the colonics, where the same detox works for everything. Lots of different herbal, and even like after treatment, I've been on like different herbal tinctures of antifungals, which are really effective and really powerful. I think as pharmaceuticals and herbals go, I think the herbals have more variety and more to offer in that field.
I'm sorry to interrupt, but what specific herbal tinctures did you use? Was it by a specific company or brand that you can recommend for mold or any type of other condition?
Yeah, my naturopath would blend them herself at her clinic. So I really love that because it was so specific to you. And I honestly can't remember the names of them, but she would do different blends. And I mean, it would change depending on what was going on or what you needed. So that was really amazing to have that resource and not just be a cookie cutter antifungal thing.
So just to kind of recap, you were in Florida for about 4 months and it was so aggressive that you just felt like you were just kind of getting like bombarded. You went home and continued, and then you stopped the killing protocol and you were just doing the rebuild, right? Or the maintenance to help rebuild your body and your immune system. At what point did you start to feel better? Was it in Florida? Was it, a few months after being home from Florida?
So I think I started to feel a bit better while in Florida, like around like end of July, August, but still I was like, this is so intense. Like I was thinking I should be way better than this. I've been in treatment for a couple months, was doing everything we could possibly think of, but then I was doing better. My blood tests were starting to come back a little bit better, but still I was like, they are nowhere near where I thought they would be 3 months in. But then when we moved home, I told her to keep doing the maintenance. And I would say around October, I felt like a new person. Like I went back to school only part-time back at university, but then I was finishing up those courses that I had to postpone the semester before. So I was full swing. And I remember sitting there through exam period. I was writing 6 exams in like the next 2 weeks, and I was studying for like all day and my head felt clear. And I was like, oh my God, studying is not the most painful thing in the world. Like I just remember having this. I was like, this is why I liked school. And I had kind of forgotten that I'd been pushing through school because I had this long-term goal of like going into healthcare. And then I figured out naturopathic medicine. So I was always didn't want to stop because I wanted to keep moving forward, which I probably should have rested a little bit more than I did. But it was really just a feeling. And I was kind of back to, I had tried out for my university's dance team. It was back doing that a little bit. So it was a slow transition. I remember going to the gym for the first time once my port was removed and I was allowed to exercise for like the first time in 8 months. I was like, this is going to be a mess, but I'm going to go for it. So it was a really like amazing feeling. I think I remember on that Christmas break, so I'd finished exams. I felt they were hard and tough, but I was like, this isn't that painful. Like, what are other students complaining about? Like, this was horrible before. So it felt good to not be like pushing myself so hard to the point where I'd be like studying and crying because I couldn't read or my head was in so much pain. So So I probably shouldn't have done that before, but it felt amazing to not have to push that hard and be in that much pain and enjoy school again. And then on Christmas break, I remember I hadn't really seen a lot of friends. I moved home from Florida and hopped back into trying to go to school part-time. And I'd seen all my friends and family on Christmas break. And I just remember I was like, at one point, I was like, I've done something social for 7 days in a row. Like, when's the last time I've ever done that? I was like,
That's
I'm
huge.
not even, I was like, I didn't nap, like, except for one day. It's like, I had all this energy. And I was like, I'm all, like, this is insane. I was like, when have I ever done this? So that was kind of the exams and the Christmas break. I was like, whoa.
So just context-wise, time-wise, when was it that you were in Florida? So you mentioned you came back at the end of the summer, and then in October you were like, oh my goodness, I feel a lot better. And then it got better and better from there. So was this, this last summer, the summer before? When was this?
That was 2019. I was in Florida for that summer. And then it was kind of going into my third year of my undergrad that I came back and picked up school again. So that was, summer, fall of 2019.
And from there, has it been just maintenance to keep yourself maintaining? And it sounds like you kept gaining and gaining and gaining because of the work done in Florida and the work you continue to do at home. So was it just a maintenance protocol then to help you continue to improve? And I mean, obviously you're doing amazing today.
Yeah, so it's definitely not been as smooth as just a maintenance protocol. I wish it was a pretty uphill climb the whole time. I've had lots of ups and downs. I kind of had an issue where like my iron tanked in my body and I had to go to the hospital for like iron infusions for a couple months, and then things here and there. My immune system, we did some retesting and my immune system was not functioning. So I had to do some different injections for immune things. And then going back to like every so often, if I kind of was tanking down again, I'd go to my naturopath for more IVs or kind of readjust, start picking up some more supplements or herbal things. But overall, I think maintenance, I kind of started going back to the gym again, started working out, started getting my body back. I felt like I wasn't fighting against my body all the time. So I definitely have never gone as bad as I was before Florida. But I think it's been up and down. The last little bit's been definitely better. I think I had like a little downhill in the summer. I think I just probably was overworking myself and my immune system tanked, and some things obviously reactivate a little bit. So it just took a little bit to get under control, but then kind of a wake up call that I need to keep doing maintenance.
So clearly Florida was your game changer though, right? Because when you came back, you had some ups and downs, but you were able to quickly identify and react to the problem and go and get back to a pretty normal lifestyle. So my final question before Krista picks back up is, what do you think it was about Florida that was so different compared to New York? Because New York and you just, it's for 3 years, you were just kind of, I guess, cycling, right? And you weren't really seeing sustainable results. But in Florida, you saw really positive, sustainable results in a 4-month window with what you continued on at home. So why do you think that was different?
Yeah, so I think it was just so first of all, before you said the one thing before, and I want to touch on that about being able to like maintain myself once home. I think I learned a lot in Florida, and they were really important on educating their patients, and they really emphasized that. So they also picked up on the fact that I was trying to go to naturopathic medicine, was in college for science. So my doctors and nurses like explained as much as I wanted to. I remember my doctor sitting down and like teaching me all this biochemistry because I wanted to understand it. So I've been able to understand so much, and that's really helped with my maintenance, which is I'm really grateful for, that I have that knowledge and I'm able to understand the science and medical part of it, because it allows me to do a bit more of like self-treatment, self-maintenance, which is really amazing. But yeah, I think in Florida, besides like the education bit, which helped me do the maintenance and keep up with everything, just the all-encompassing treatment we're talking about, when they picked up every piece of the puzzle and they looked at every single aspect of what was going on. And I mean, the treatment was very intense, and I'm really grateful I had the opportunity to go, because I know lots of people have looked at the clinic and it is financially a lot. I'm grateful that my parents were able to support me, and we did fundraisers and we had a great community support, but that didn't make it any bit easier. And that was part of kind of restricts your length of treatment, which adds a stressor to it. Cause you're like, well, I got to get better in 4 months, or like, that's all we got. So that was a big player. I'm really grateful for my parents on that part. But yeah, Florida, a spinal clinic in specific, I think just really looked at all aspects of it. We were talking about when you're doing all that killing, but you're not detoxing, that's not going to do anything for you. You're going to start going these circles. Or if you're treating the Lyme, but not the mold, or you're ignoring the this and the that, you're not going to get anywhere if you ignore one little piece of the puzzle, which is so frustrating. But
I love that you are feeling so much better today.
Thank you.
And I would love to hear, when did you decide to get into naturopathic medicine?
Yeah, so I think I kind of decided in my second year of my undergrad, I was seeing my naturopath at home. I was seeing Dr. McShane, who practiced. She was an MD, but was also practicing kind of in like a kind of mix of the two. Was really, I had never really experienced that whole other aspect of medicine besides like, here's your prescription, go. So I started looking into it and then seeing my ND at home. And I think the summer in Florida really solidified my decision. I think I was kind of humming and hawing between wanting to go to med school and naturopathic med school. And after just my negative experience with the medical system, I was like, I'm going to get nowhere in this field with medical school. And I remember talking to my one of the doctors at the clinic about it. And they obviously, I was telling them what I want to do. They get to know you so well because you're there all day, every day. And he's like, if you want to learn about this stuff and like the complexities of it, he's like, go to naturopathic medical school. He's like, you could eventually practice. Like, they were MDs, but he was saying you have to do your med school and your residency. And then he's like, you're going to be 50 by the time you specialize in Lyme at this point as an MD. I was like, okay, that's fair. He's like, you're not going to learn what you really want to learn about. So I think he really helped me, encourage me to like follow my passions and learn about what I want to learn about. So then at that point, that's why I was like, I'm going back to university as soon as I can, because I was kind of done with my undergrad, but needed to get the degree to go to medical school. So I started at the Canadian College of Naturopathic Medicine in Toronto this September.
So exciting.
Yeah.
That's incredible. So
thank you.
Looking back at this Lyme journey, it's really like you found your passion and your purpose.
Yeah, absolutely. I think it's hard to imagine my life without the journey. I wish, like, part of me is like, I wish I would never have been sick, but I think you always grow and learn from it and think you wish it was a little less unpleasant, but still taught you the same lessons, which I don't think there's no perfect way to do that. But yeah, I'm really grateful. I found exactly what I want to do, and I am very happy with where it led me.
And it sounds like you've always had a passion for giving back. You talked about coaching in gymnastics and helping others. And I love that this journey is enabling that and kind of adding to, has, like, looking back, before you got diagnosed, was there anything you really wanted to do in life or be, or were you just so young that you didn't really know?
It was definitely a hard time trying to figure out what I wanted to do in the midst of all of that, because I was 16 when I got sick. So I think I was doing really well in school, loved math and science, was like, loved going to calculus and biology and chemistry, but didn't really know what I wanted to do. So I'd initially just applied to like a general science undergrad, and then had kind of thought I'd focus somewhere in healthcare, but I didn't really have an idea of what was out there besides medicine or nursing. I didn't really know the options besides those two. So I think my journey really led me to the exact like niche in medicine I wanted to go into.
I love that. And besides just, giving back in this way, really, you're going to help a lot of patients by becoming this naturopathic doctor. You've been spreading awareness about Lyme disease now throughout this journey, especially compared to growing up in high school and college and maybe not being as vocal about it. What was that shift for you, and how has that been? What have you been doing to spread awareness?
Yeah, so I think that shift really came when we were deciding to move to Florida, because people had kind of started, like, close to us knew what was going on, but we needed to do like a big fundraiser and to be able to like get this treatment and be able to go. So I just started being way more open about everything, trying to share my story for the first time. I'd never really written it out start to finish and shared it with anyone, which now I feel like I could spew it out pretty quickly. So that was kind of the turning point of being more open about it. And then people obviously wanted to keep up with what was going on with me throughout the time there. So I remember we created like a little private Facebook group, and we'd post updates to like everyone that wanted to keep up with what was going on and like send their love and check in. And then I started kind of being, I think it was just in general, in Florida, people knew I was there. So I was making a post or two here or there, kind of about what was going on, a little bit of awareness. But then this past May, with Lyme disease awareness being in May, I was like, I want to do something a little bit more. I was feeling pretty good, and I just felt like I wanted to be a little bit more vocal about everything, and kind of starting naturopathic medical school. I was like, I don't know, I just really wanted to do more than just make one post or share one story. So I started a little business back kind of during lockdown of 2019, I brought out my sewing machine again. And I was like, my grandma's a phenomenal sewer and quilter and had taught me when I was little. I'd make all these scrunchies for like my ballet class and whatnot. So I was like, I can remember how to do this. Like I was bored silly and didn't know what to do with myself. So I started sewing these scrunchies. And then over the next year and a bit, it turned into a little bit like a business I was running on Instagram, doing different scrunchies. I was sewing face masks because that's the hottest thing.
Yep.
Like tote bags, all different things. And then when May came around, kind of I started planning March, April. I was like, I'm going to do a whole bunch of green ones. So I went to the fabric store and got a whole bunch of different green fabrics. And then I decided I was going to do half of the proceeds from all my green scrunchies and masks that month to donate them. I think I donated to Lyme, Ontario, because that was the local Lyme organization near me. Yeah. So I got really, and that's picked up a lot more than I was expecting. Honestly, I thought it was just, I had a couple hundred followers on Instagram, nothing big. Some of my friends would buy scrunchies and masks, and why not? And it got pretty busy. I remember making my mom and my boyfriend help me cut all these fabrics. I couldn't keep up with the orders, which was amazing.
Oh my gosh. That's so cool that you've done all of that.
Yeah. And my dad, sorry, I cannot forget to mention my dad was cutting fabric for me.
It's so great that you have such a great support system too.
Yeah.
It's so needed. It's so needed on the journey.
Yeah. Moving home was the best decision I possibly could have made through that journey. I think trying to go away seemed fun, but I needed the support of my parents. They were my best friends. I'd call them my roommates throughout university. They didn't love that, but
I love that.
I actually just moved to Toronto this fall. So that was a big step in my journey as well.
Yeah.
Finally moving out and feeling healthy enough to not having to live at home, which was really amazing.
Amazing. So now you're on your own.
Yeah.
And what kind of things are you doing at home for your own kind of maintenance?
Yeah. So sorry to
that was it.
So I started when I moved here. It was kind of a whole shock to my routine, but I think that I was really excited for that, kind of a new fresh start. Starting like naturopathic medical school. So I started volunteering at this yoga studio down the street from me. And if I volunteer a couple hours a week, I get unlimited free classes, which to me was a bonus. I'm a student, couldn't pay for my yoga fancy gym membership or anything.
Yeah.
So that was like such a important aspect. In the summer, I was kind of working out outside, and I think moving my body is so important to me. And I think it's just a reminder that like my body feels okay. Because I think when I was sick, working out and exercise was painful. I had to push through it. But when I'm able to move my body and it feels good, it's just amazing. I don't know how to explain it. I think anyone who's had to like fight against their body that hard, when you exercise and it feels good, even if it's still tough. Like when I'm working out, sometimes I'm like, this is horrible. Like I can't do one more crunch. Like, but it feels amazing. And I think I also think yoga is so important. I go to the hot yoga and I sweat buckets and it feels amazing. I think mentally and physically, it's a great practice for me and my maintenance. I use an infrared sauna. My parents got one of the portable ones. I got that this summer. My naturopath used to have one in her clinic, but then they end up shifting it to a different clinic room. So then she suggested getting one of the portable ones. So I have it in my apartment, which has been really helpful. I use it all the time. Maybe less between hot yoga, kind of alternate that and hot yoga, get sweaty one way or the other. And then just generally, I feel like I am eating really healthy. I've been plant-based the last 4 years, but I really focus on like plant-based whole foods. Not eating like, you can be vegan and still not eat healthy, but just really focusing. I love to cook. So just eating really healthy. I do some like different juices I make. I do like all my binders, like my charcoal and chlorella and different juices I make. I'm going to do that tonight, make all my jars for the week, but just little things. I feel like I struggle to do like a full supplement or medical regimen after doing so many intense ones. And I think a lot of people can resonate with that. Once you do that so intensely, you just like, I can't do like 50 pills a day or even like doing 10 supplements a day. I think I get like my GI, like my stomach gets upset and my bowel movements get thrown off as soon as I'm doing too much. So I'm kind of in that doing a little bit. And then I remember saying to my mom even last week, I don't think I'm doing enough. And she's like, you're doing enough. Like you're doing more than you think you are. So I think I'm trying to find a sweet spot in maintenance.
Yeah, you're doing great.
Sometimes I feel like after doing so much, this feels like nothing. So I'm like,
I totally get that. Do you find like you're so in tune with your body now?
Oh yeah.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
And I feel like it's interesting. You know what you need, and sometimes you don't even know why. You just
Yeah.
know exactly what's going on, or something. I'm like, oh, I could tell. I like start taking, like, I took these supplements. I was like, oh no, like this is not working with me. Or you start doing, and that's really helpful. Or this like really threw me off. Or I tried to start going for an IV again, and it just made things worse. I was like, nope, not what my body needs. Like if it's making me worse and not better, not what I need.
Yeah. It's so important when we learn that.
Mm-hmm.
It's like we need to become our bosses of healing.
Yeah,
Yeah.
you
And
become, for sure.
your own doctor. You're actually going to
Yeah,
become a doctor,
yeah.
which is incredible.
Thank you.
I would love to hear a little bit about mindset. If you have any
Yeah.
tips on that, I feel like mindset is so important. You've talked a lot about self-care physically, and yoga is
Mm-hmm.
kind of like a bridge between the two. But is there
Yeah.
anything revolving around mindset that you can talk about?
Yeah. So I definitely think I'm not an expert in this. I think I still
Mhm,
struggle with that. I was saying
mhm,
earlier that this whole process is very traumatic. And I think I didn't realize how traumatic it was until I moved home from Florida and kind of had to come back to real life, because I was living in a little bubble there, just
yeah.
my family and I. Um, so I think I really didn't realize how traumatic it was until then.
Mhm,
I think my mom kind of had to bug me to start going to see a therapist. I was like, no, 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 like I don't want to see another medical professional. But that was honestly game changing to me.
mm,
Um, and it's something that I still talk to her. I still go to my appointments. I spread out how often. I mean, if things, depends on how things are going. At first, I was going way more often. Now it's every so often. But I think that was really important and a big step in my journey, just realizing how much I'd been through. And I kind of think I pretended to be normal, so I normalized what I was going through. I think
mhm,
that's so easy. Like we're saying, we're acting, we're going fine. Like I was still doing university. I still was on my school's dance team for a bit. So on the outside, you appear really great, but I think that takes such a toll on you mentally, that you're
mhm,
putting up this act and you've been through so much and you normalize it. But it's like, that's not normal. I remember the first time I went, and she's like, that's not normal what you've been through. Like, it's okay. Like, this is a lot. And I was like, yeah, I guess. Like, so I think that was a really big step. I was so focused on the physical throughout Florida and coming home. And I think the last 2 years, I've really focused on maintaining the physical, like I was explaining, but just really working on the mental aspect of it, because it completely changes who you are, the whole experience as well.
it really does. I just
Mm-hmm.
have two kind of final questions.
Yeah, no worries.
And if Matt, if you have anything else. First, if you could go back and talk to yourself when you first were diagnosed, with that
Mm-hmm.
year of ahead of you being misdiagnosed, is there any advice that you would give your younger self?
Yeah, it's pretty crazy to think about. Just, I think I was a whole different person then, just hadn't been through what I've been through now, and was also just so young in a different spot of my life completely. I think the time it
Mhm.
hit me was like, just 16 to 22 feels like two different people to me.
Yeah.
Um, yeah, I think I wrote something even for the Lyme month campaign for Tick Boot Camp. And I think my biggest thing was like advocating for yourself, because I was, you're not used to it, but unfortunately, doctors are gonna be like, nope, I don't believe you. That's not true. You're making it up. It's in your head, or it's this, take this medication. If it's not working, that's your problem. Like you get all these answers. And like we were saying, we know our body's best, and that you only learn that with time going through
Mhm.
this. So I think advocating for yourself, but also having someone else to advocate with you. Like I had my parents. I think sometimes when you're that sick, you just can't advocate for yourself, or you're so weak and fatigued, or your like cognition or your brain fog is not there. Like
Mhm.
sometimes having someone to go to appointments with you, because I would go in there and like my mom would be taking notes. I wasn't taking notes. Like I couldn't possibly do that, or kind of was
Yep.
like defending me when something would kind of brush by me if I would kind of zoned out. She was there for me. Like both my mom and dad would go to appointments with me. I was too young. I couldn't even drive myself to all these appointments when I got sick.
Yeah.
Um, so I think advocating for yourself, but also having that support to help you with the advocating, but also to help you in general with the support.
Yeah. It's so needed. And the journey is
Yeah.
not linear. It's so up and down,
No.
and we just have to keep going.
Yeah.
Yeah. And then my last question is, getting into naturopathic medicine, how are you going to use your journey to really help others and, with your practice? Yeah.
Yeah. So I think it's really interesting coming into the school. I think lots of people who have gotten into the program have been through something like as a patient, and lots of people
Mm.
have it. And I think that patient perspective, I mean, I don't wish it upon anyone, but it's so valuable. Even when we were talking, I'm in our health psychology class, you can tell the people who have been on the other side of it and just how they interact with even like simulated patients is completely different, and how you understand the patient's perspective and your empathy. And it's just, I think it's going to make me a better physician in the long run. Absolutely. Whether I'm treating patients with Lyme or just patients in general, I think it's completely, I can feel for the patient. I understand, like I can literally put myself in their shoes and know what they're being through. And I think it's a horrible experience, but the lessons learned are very valuable and will only help me.
I just love that so much that
Thank you.
you've really taken this journey and made this your passion and purpose in the world. And I think you're going to help so many people.
Thank you.
Mm-hmm.
Madi, we can't thank you enough for joining our Tick Bootcamp podcast, and we hope you have a great rest of your week.
Thank you for having me.
Thank you so much, Madi.
Thank you for listening to the Tick Bootcamp interview with our guest, Madi Peters. To our listeners, we have a call to action. First, if you'd like to learn more about Madi, please visit our Instagram page at MADE_BY_MADI__. Second, if you've enjoyed this episode of the Tick Bootcamp podcast, please share it with your friends on social media. Third, Tick Bootcamp has created a Tick Bite blueprint that has been inspired by the information that has been shared with us by past podcast guests. We urge you to visit our website at tickbootcamp.com to view the blueprint. Please note we appreciate any input or improvements you would like to share with us. Fourth, don't forget to subscribe to this podcast on Apple Podcasts, Google Podcasts, or Spotify to get your automatic episode updates of our Tick Bootcamp podcast. And finally, we thank you, our community, for your comments on our past podcast episodes. Please take a minute to leave us an honest review on Apple Podcasts, Google Podcasts, Spotify, or on social media. We make it a point to read every single one of the reviews we get. Thank you, as always, for listening.